Incredible musicians like the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, Parliament Funkadelic, The Temptations, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, and the Jackson 5 all have one man in common, the legendary rock and roll manager, Steve Lieber. Within moments of meeting Steve at the blackdoctor.org Community Voices in Health Equity Summit in New York City, he revealed his current body of work, unrelated to the music industry legacy he leaves behind. Steve's current drive comes from the sobering hangover of a deeply personal, very challenging journey navigating healthcare for his beloved wife, Marion. Steve told me that after Marion's ordeal, he recognized his inability to find credible, trusted, and breakthrough information for her care. That realization would lead to one of his greatest inspirations, the Metaflix platform. Joining forces with another powerhouse entertainment icon, Neil Braun, super lawyer to Fortune 500 companies and serial entrepreneur whose 14 businesses have sales of nearly $3 billion, Ron Burke, and HBO executive Steve Sheffer, the co-founders launched Metaflix. It's a platform that provides accurate health information via the best knowledge and engagement from world-class medical institutions and their expert practitioners, combining entertainment luminaries, clinical thought leaders, and pharma industry trailblazers. In an email to me before this conversation you're about to hear, Steve said, "Metaflix is my destiny." Steve is about to share with you some of his younger days suffering discrimination as a young Jewish man in the South, his prowess building a prominent business as a music manager, and his legacy movement to bring you the best health information in the world. I'm Damon Davis, and this is my Discovery Diary with rock and roll impresario and now health equity advocate, Mr. Steve Lieber. You ready to get started? I don't want to keep you all day. I can see you and I can just talk and talk.
I put some time away for you because, I think you're an important person. I want you to be part of Metaflix, one of these days. I wrote you a note about where I see it going.
I saw that. I really appreciated that. And I would love to be part of Metaflix one day. I was in the website looking around at what you all do and how the platform is developed, and it looks really amazing. And I was inspired by some words that Neil sent to me in an email. He said that he left that Health Equity Summit with a new appreciation of the privilege that certain people have and the challenges of health inequities in our nation. And I just really appreciated the fact that he felt comfortable saying that to me, but
great.
Two, that he walked away with that, which was the absolute desire of Reggie Ware and all of the team, was to make sure that people are understanding what health inequities are and how you guys are working toward them. So
well, I lived it, so I'll tell you the story, and you'll
sure.
You'll appreciate.
So let me
yeah, but I want to give you a little detail of background of my growing up, so you'll understand where I came from in terms of health inequities, but inequities generally, prejudice, how I confronted it, what happened to me as a young child, and how it molded me so that when I came to that conference, I wasn't shocked. People are not freaking aware. And I'll start in the beginning. So, when I grew up, I was born in Brooklyn and moved to a place called Bell Harbor, but left when I was 4, maybe 5 years old. And I went to a place called Crestview, which is outside of Richmond, Virginia. So when you move to Virginia, the home of the Confederacy, you really learn a lot when you're a Yankee. I didn't know. I was 5 years old. I didn't even know what a Yankee was. I only knew there was a Yankee baseball team. That was all I knew. In those days, it was the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Giants. So I get to Richmond, outside Crestview, 10,000 homes. It's like Levittown. I don't know if you ever heard of Levittown in New York, but 10,000 homes all look the same. And a Yankee moves in. And then all of a sudden I go to school. I was in the country. My father was a staple machine salesman, and he sold to the tobacco industry. So, he was on the road, but I'm left alone going to this school and in this school system. And they stopped pushing me around because I'm a Yankee, right? Then they found out I was Jewish when they wanted the Christmas show. Then they really beat me up. So I started, talking about anti-Semitism now. I felt it when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, for many years while I was living. Then I finally moved to a big city, Richmond itself, which had a Jewish community, and I wasn't the only Yankee. There were other Yankees inside Richmond, but coming and being in, people don't realize that Richmond itself home of the Confederacy, Robert E. Lee. That is where they still lived many years. Why did we lose the war? Well, you start off and you really start understanding what life's all about. Fast forward, my father always disliked the idea that I wanted to be in show business. I played all the sports and I cut school. So I was only interested in sports and movies. I used to cut school, go to the movies, or I'd do other things, but I just wasn't interested in school. And when it came time, I was 11 to start really working at things. I started delivering newspapers, washing cars, gardening. I never took a dime from my father because he used to beat me up, really literally with a strap, because he felt I should be a lawyer and not just keep on worshiping my cousin, Michael Conrad, who's in Hill Street Blues, the sergeant. And he used to stop by our house and I worshiped him. And he couldn't stand the idea I was worshiping Myron, who had 3 wives, kept on, good-looking guy, and was in showbiz. And I thought, boy, is he cool.
Yeah, right.
And the idea of me thinking Myron, Michael Conrad. So anyway, now I work and work and work, and now it's time to go to school. And, I applied to colleges, but I knew how to work. But anyway, I get to Northeastern, and now it's a wake-up call. I got the Boston guys, Irish cops. I really learned another kind of prejudice against blacks. And you know why I knew so much? Because I lived in a boarding house. First, my father drops me off at a YMCA. And I meet a guy named Phil Rutten there, and we had to get out of the Y because that was not a place to be. 2 young guys in a Y.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right next to Northeastern. We go to a rooming house in Roxbury. Roxbury was a tough neighborhood. It was really a neighborhood that was both black and white. I call it a checkerboard neighborhood. And so we ran a poker game, wiped everybody out within a week, and all of a sudden we're standing on the street. The lady next door, Mrs. Tell, says, boys, what's the matter? We're on the street in Roxbury. I said, Jack Little threw us out of the rooming house. She said, well, come on, you live with me. Now, this black lady and her husband took us in. So I lived with a black family for a year.
Wow.
It changed my life. And why did it change my life? Because I heard all their stories. They were from Haiti and they pushed around and they came to America. The great story of an immigrant family coming here and they bought a few pieces of real estate. They worked hard. Anyway, our deal was I would drive her to pick up the rents because we were 2 tough guys. And she would let us use her car on Saturday night for our dates. So we had the greatest.
That's amazing.
But Steve Lieber hung out in black clubs. Why? I lived in a black neighborhood and I went to the black clubs and I found a group. I'm 18, right? I get to school, I'm 18. December, I turned 19. Can't drink until you're 21, but I'm in these clubs, these black clubs. And even then I had almost no hair, even though I was a kid. And they thought I was older, especially in black clubs. They didn't care. They let me in. My guy there, and there's a group called the G Clefs. You'll look them up tonight. They had a song called Kading Dong. And they have a hit. And they're a semi-well-known group in Boston. And I go to these guys, go backstage, I said, guys, I'm the smartest guy in Northeastern. I know everything about taxes. I can handle your divorces. You get arrested, I'll know what to do. I'm a street guy. I can help you. I talked these guys into letting me be their manager.
Wow.
19 years old. I mean, they looked like the Temptations. They were that kind of a pop vocal group, like the Temps. But they were great guys. And I fell in love with them and they fell in love with me. The first thing I do is go and they're in clubs in Revere Beach, Whitey's gang. I had to go up against the mob guys. I go into the first thing I do, first week I'm with them. I go to these guys and I say, they need a raise. So I go out and I start fighting with them. 4 guys pick me up, put me over a French fry machine the next day. The next time your head's going in the French fry machine.
Oh my gosh.
Really tough guys.
What?
They put me down, turn to them. And remember, I'm a college kid. Spell Lieber backwards, Rebel.
Oh my goodness. Rebel.
So I'm now understanding Black America in Boston, tough city. But I got those guys a raise and they never forgot it. And we became like brothers. And I did bail them out and I did handle their divorces and their taxes and everything else. And I did a great job for them. And I'm making money managing a group and another group hears about me. And now all of a sudden I'm managing 3 groups, but I'm working, go to school 10 weeks, work 10 weeks. I'm building my own business. And then but I protested at Woolworths and I sat in the Woolworths and I joined CORE and I joined the NAACP at the time. And I led marches back in 61. I'm in college, 59, I got there. So it's 60, 61, 62, when things were tough. During, you know what, Martin Luther King was still living and
Hmm.
protesting. And I was part of that movement.
Wow.
So I'm there because of my guys and because where I am, and I'm going to black neighbors, black clubs. So I understood what happened at the BDO conference. I
Mhm.
understood the prejudice. I understood how people feel and what they feel. And if it wasn't for me, my guys wouldn't have gotten a raise.
You raise a really interesting point that I've often thought about is that fights for rights and equality are not a monolithic thing that just one group has to take on. So when you're in a civil rights movement that is for Black equality, it's not going to get there unless you have the kind of allyship that you're referring to, that you've got someone else who is also advocating, who looks like the people who are doing the oppressing or who are promoting the inequality and are saying, I also don't think this is right. They don't believe it's right for themselves, and I don't think it's right as somebody who looks like one of you.
Right.
And that allyship is incredibly important.
Yeah, even during Black Lives Matter, lots of white people marched. And it was because everybody felt the hurt. Everybody felt the hurt. But the next thing I do is start my own big business. And I
Mhm.
grew it because I became College Bureau of America. So that meant I was booking colleges all across the country, helping them produce their talent for their big events. And that grew into a sensational business. I had 20 people working for me, and I was all over the country. And I used to teach the kids at schools how to promote and produce the show. So I would not only just buy the talent for the school, but I would help them produce the show. And I would buy wholesale from William Morris. That was my biggest agency that I worked with. And I would then book the talent retail at schools, but I would send my guys, my reps down to help them produce the show. So I was really the middleman between the big agencies and the schools. And that business grew into a monster. I was
Wow.
having like hundreds of schools that depended on me. I was making a big living. I bought a club in Boston. So remember, I'm not even 21. So you
My
couldn't drink.
gosh, man. Wow.
Well, because I went to a hotel owner. I said, you got this empty space. Why don't I start a club here? He didn't even check me out. In my age, he knew I was older, but I wasn't. Same thing would happen when I worked for William Morris. But the funny part is that if you just feel like you are, people believe. And you know,
Hmm.
I just walked in, did a deal with them, and the mayor came and introduced him, the mayor, and the opening night. Anyway, it was a trip.
That's
I didn't have
amazing.
much money, but I had a lot of superstar talent that came there. Eartha Kitt to Odetta to Leon Biv, you know, Josh White. I don't remember those names, but anyway, the best time of my life. Every stewardess stayed at that hotel. I don't have to tell you, they came in free, and it was fun times. But then
I bet.
I wound up falling in love with a girl in Boston, and the draft came and they were coming after me because I was in ROTC. I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I was against the war in Vietnam, another protest. And I later really get involved with that whole movement when I get into the music business. But the first thing that happened is I realized I better get married. So even though I was getting married in February 1965, when I
Wow.
graduated in 64, I went with her. We got married at Boston City Hall so I could stay out of the army.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
That was my first move, but I was in law
The
school.
rebellion continues.
I was in law school. I was at Suffolk Law School. That was no longer a deferment. But Northeastern, the 5 years at Northeastern taught me so much. How to really work within communities, work within, the school was great because it was a poor boys school. It wasn't what it is today, which is a sought after university. It was a startup. There were no dorms when I got there. That's why we stayed at the Y. There are no dorms, but every kid should go into a co-op program so they work a little, they know what the world's about before they graduate. So anyway, now my wife, I get married, she wants to live in New York, and William Morris is after me. So because William Morris is after me, and they're the biggest agency in the world, they need somebody to help run their music division, the college part of it. I go to work for William Morris. It was, in one sense, a major mistake because I lost my independence. I
Yeah.
sold the company. I was now I didn't understand politics. I didn't understand the whole system. And I get there and it's nothing but confusion and politics and everything else. And they have the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars, and they're putting people on this caravan of stars like the Supremes and all sorts of acts they didn't even represent. Anyway, I didn't agree with their methodology. So I ran the college division, and it grew to be a giant. And my friend there, Jerry Brandt, signed the Rolling Stones, and I become involved with him because I was the go-to guy to book the universities and book all the major arenas. So Jerry depended on me. He was leaving, and he starts the Electric Circus. He leaves William Morris, starts the Electric Circus. They make me the head of the music division. And I start building it and growing it. And I'm on the executive committee. And I'm a kid, right? I'm 22 years old.
And you've sold a company already, and you're running a division of a
I'm running a
major
division.
organization. That's incredible.
All right. And they think I'm 30. Like, no one ever asked me my age because I looked it. So the thing that I learned, though, so much going to the executive meetings and being on the board and getting Class A stock and building a big business for them is there prejudice here also? So in my book, I describe a guy named Wally Amos, famous Amos Cookies.
Mm-hmm.
But he signed Simon and Garfunkel before he left, and he had some other things. Wally lives in Hawaii, great guy. But now, the only black guy was working for me in the music department, right? In the entire agency, New York, Chicago, California, London, one black guy. You know how many black artists we had? How many people we represented?
Hundreds, probably.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Okay. So I go to the board meeting. You'll love this. Go to the board meeting. Now I built I'm representing the Rolling Stones. I'm representing the Bee Gees. I'm representing biggest superstars in the world. I signed the Motown acts. Temptations first. They come to my house. We play basketball together. They swim in my pool. I'm with them. Barry Gordy thinks I'm so cool. If you go see the Temptations show, I should have been in it. Not Shelley Berger, who's in it, the manager. I broke the Temptations. I took them to the White House, which
Really?
Otis was the only living member when I saw them on Broadway. He wasn't in the show, but he was in the audience. I go to Otis and I say, Otis, you play basketball in my house. I broke you. I took you to London. I took you to the White House. He said, Steve, can you send me the picture of the White House? I always wanted that picture. I never got it. So anyway, and the story is that I signed Stevie Wonder, I signed Martha Vandellas, and then I signed Dinah Ross out of the Supremes, and she brings me the Jackson Fives. I had Dionne Warwick. So because I was the music department and because I had all these black acts already, they expected me to have a black agent. But when I go to the meeting, you'll love this. When I go to the meeting, I said, why does that black agent have to work for me? And why aren't there 2 or 3 black agents? Why don't we put one in television, one in theater? There are black people in theater too, in the movies.
All right.
They insisted, this is the old time management, all right? Remember, it's 1960s, old time thinking. I'm there in 64 to 72. They forced me, after I walked out, I stormed out of that meeting. I said, I'm not hiring a black agent until you guys hire black agents in other departments. Now, no one in the world knows this story, except for the guys, half of them are dead. But the idea was I insisted they hire a black agent outside, and I didn't win. They came to me, begged me to hire him, and I did. I hired a guy named Sam McKeith. I interviewed Sam, and I tell him the truth. I said, Sam, but you're going to hear things from these Southern promoters. You'll listen. The way they learn, they have a listening device, so they can only listen. They can't speak. So that's how they learn. But then you're going to hear shit. Who do you have for me? Which one of these do you have? And I had them all: Ray Charles and Dion and Michael Jackson. So Sam, I told him when I left. So I leave William Morris in 1972. I did a show there called Jesus Christ Superstar, which was really my big win. I go to Andrew Lloyd Webber and a guy named Robert Stigwood. I had the Bee Gees, and he was their manager. I had John Mayall, and he was their manager. He trusted me. So when the MCA version of Jesus Christ Superstar, the album comes out, I call up Andrew and Robert. He represented Andrew, and I said, guys, you can't put this Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway right now because basically Hadassah groups and these other groups from New York City are not going to go see Jesus Christ Superstar right away. Let me take it to arenas. And I stood up to the industry and I toured the arena version of Jesus Christ and made Robert Stigwood a multimillionaire.
Wow, that's incredible.
And
Yeah.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, his first big hit. So in 1972, when I leave, I have the Rolling Stones, and I leave with Jesus Christ Superstar because Steve would push me to leave William Morris. He
Mhm.
said, Steve, I'm giving you the show. You made me a multimillionaire. Take that show, produce it for me around the world, and I'm giving you Jesus. And that was my foundation. 2 companies at Jesus Christ Superstar. I knew I wanted to be a manager, but I didn't have any acts. We thought we were going to tour the Stones. Mick's a very smart guy, and there's all this stuff's in my book. But we had a deal, and I shook hands. We shook hands at Beverly Hills Hotel. We had a deal. But all of a sudden, 10 weeks later, Madison Square Garden calls them up. They offer 4 times what we did. And Mick, who is Mick, he goes for the money.
Yeah,
And
sure.
we don't have the Stones, but luckily enough, one of the first groups I assigned is a group called Elephant's Memory, which becomes the Plastic Ono Band, the backup band for Yoko and John.
Oh,
So
wow.
the first band, all right? And now I'm going to meet John Lennon. And
That's incredible. Wow.
4 years I had the privilege, 4 years I have the privilege of sitting with John Lennon and Yoko and going to the studio with them, smoking pot with them. I have the pictures with me and John. And I had to go to meetings every other week with John and Yoko and sit around with the band and talk about her career. It was really
Mhm.
about her career, not about John's career.
Right, right.
And he, a long evolved story about how she influenced John and what happened and his affair. And it's all in my book. It's too long a story to tell you today, but it was fun. And the next group I signed is Aerosmith. But this guy, Frank Connolly, always used to put him on shows. So he always gave me the opening acts. He always gave me chances to break my new groups. And it gave me slots. With Don Law, I didn't give a shit. So when the Rolling Stones came along, I gave it to Frank. And I made him a multimillionaire.
Wow.
And he became rich. So now he has this group called Aerosmith. And he says, Steve, you should manage these guys. I can't break them. So he gives me Aerosmith. I hear the song Dream On. And of course, I knew it was a hit. I invited 2 guys to come. Clive Davis, who's very famous, and Ahmet Ertegun, who was the head of then of Atlantic Records. And after they played Aerosmith upstairs, they don't even know this story. It'll be known throughout the world, but the group doesn't know it. Come downstairs. It was in Max's Kansas City, a little club. Come downstairs. Ahmet says, "Come over here." And Ahmet was the cool guy. He had the Stones, Led Zeppelin. He was their record label. He had Yes, all these big groups. He said, "Steve, Aerosmith's exactly like the Rolling Stones. They're just a good imitation. He's a good singer, but I'd never sign him. But if you talk to me for 15 minutes, Clive Davis is going to pay you 4 times what he thought he was going to pay you." So, sure enough, Clive Davis pays big time money for Aerosmith. We had an incredible record deal, and I go on to sign many other groups, and it becomes an incredible management company. We were the biggest in the world. We wound up AC/DC, the Scorpions, Def Leppard, you name it, we had them. Later, Donna Summers and Dionne Warwick and Ted Nugent and lots of superstars. And I go on to produce, while I'm at Lieber Krebs, I go on to produce a show called Beatlemania. And then I did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I did other things, ice skating with Bob Iger at ABC. I did that as an alternative to football for women. We did ABC, My World of Sports, and we took it to Japan, took it all over the world. So I had the world at my fingertips. You know, both at
Right.
William Morris. When I left there, they were in a state of shock. It took them a month to replace me. I had to stay there an extra month. Usually they lock up the drawers and throw you out.
Right.
With me, I had to stay there because they didn't know anything about the music division.
That's
I
incredible.
had to stay there. But I did tell Sam McKeith, going back to William Morris for a second, I did tell Sam McKeith, the black agent who I hired, I said, Sam, they're going to try and give you all the black acts, Temptation, Stevie Wonder, all the acts we have there. I said, don't accept them as their agent. Let them divide up among other people. Go out and find a white group. Go out and find somebody that's going to be big in rock and roll. Because otherwise, you're always going to be pegged the black agent who gets black acts.
Good point. Yeah.
Said, so, you know, he signed Bruce Springsteen.
What? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And that's why you have to hear Sam's story. I love Sam to this day. So anyway, now I'm telling you about Lieber Krebs, which I formed with David, and we've become the biggest management company in the business. And I start producing shows, lots of other shows. We're incredibly successful. Things are really going my way. I'm married. I now have 3 kids. I'm taking them all over the world to see my different groups, and things are going great because I'm producing other shows. I wind up producing every kind of, I'm interested in every kind of show. I do Broadway, I do everything I can because I didn't want to talk to rock groups my whole life. Diversify. All of a sudden, a show comes along and the Russian government, it was the USSR in 1987. They contact me to bring music from the Soviet Union, still the Soviet Union, but Glasnost happens and the Soviet Union is about to explode. And they asked me to come over and look at rock. Through the Canadian government, I go to Russia in 1987. America wasn't even doing visas. So I had to go to Canada, get a visa, go to, anyway, end the
Wow.
story. I go and I see the rock groups are terrible. I said, it's not for all the people. Give me something that's for all the people. And then I went to see the Moscow Circus. Now, what do I know about producing a circus? And I bring the Moscow Circus to America. Elephants, tigers, bears, horses. I bring them on 2 747s. It's amazing. Meet them at the airport. I'm on an elephant. I bring them here. I learned a lot about people. The Russian people love us.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the Russian people. It was Ukrainians. They were all together because it was the Soviet Union. And I really showed them how to make money, how to really make money. I give them a check for $8 million at the end of the first tour. And by the way, during that first tour, all the US senators, everybody comes, every place we went, the big shots all come because it's Glasnost. It's the first time we're interacting with the Soviet Union. So everybody came. And it was really fun. All the acts, everybody came. And then over time, they asked me when I produced the first oil conference, and I go to Siberia and produce the first oil conference in Siberia. And I realized oil's a strategic weapon in the United States because the FBI and the CIA told me when they patted me on the back and said, you know what you're doing, kid.
Wow.
Then one of my guys gets killed. So we were making a lot of money. And all of a sudden they shoot one of our employees, Misha, and I never went back for 25 years. And then I'm doing other things here in other businesses, and I start growing my companies, but my wife gets sick, first with breast cancer, and then with multiple myeloma. And when she got sick with multiple myeloma, I spent 5 years, I dropped everything I was doing in showbiz. And I realized, wow, I really don't know that much about the medical world, the health system.
Steve, tell me for a second before you go further. I just want to stop for a moment and talk about this moment that you realize this diagnosis for your wife. You and Marion were together for years. You
48
were,
years. 48.
yeah. How many years was it?
We were married 48 years, so it was 5 years before her. First of all, she died 4 days before her 70th birthday.
Wow.
So she was 65 when she gets diagnosed, about 64, 65. So now it's so devastating. And here's the crazy part about who my wife was. She knew there was something wrong. She was a golf club champion. It hurt in her thighs, and she said, I can't play golf. Everybody said, take Boniva, take this. And she was so determined that she went and kept on going until she could see this doctor, John Belazikian at Columbia Presbyterian. And he wasn't seeing patients because he had lost a child, jumped off the GW bridge. He was only doing research. And it was an amazing story how she persevered until she met him. He diagnosed her with multiple myeloma. No one else caught it. We wasted a year, actually. And he graduated Harvard. He called a great friend of mine now, Ken Anderson, who takes care of Tom Brokaw, took care of a lot of famous people. So he takes over her diagnosis, what she's all about, and I have total dependence on Ken and his team, and he's going to cure Marion. And he was confident. Now, she did store her stem cells, and part of the blame of her not recovering and living longer was she never did the transplant. Even though she had the stem cells, she never did the transplant. So it was really her fault. And Ken didn't push her hard enough. But
Was she afraid?
She was believed that something would be invented and she would not have to go through the devastation of doing a transplant, which really brings you down. We actually moved to Boston at the end, and she had a little touch of pneumonia. He said, go to Florida and get rid of the pneumonia. She never came back. It was the wake-up call for me. that, why didn't I do more? Why wasn't I a better quarterback? Why didn't I keep her in Boston? So I had a lot of issues myself. And I decided, what am I going to do with my life after she died? I went away and just thought on a beach in Italy by myself, just thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And I decided to go and produce 14 specials on PBS. I had done a lot of specials on PBS, so they knew me in Detroit Public Television. And I decided to do 14 specials on health and wellness. I didn't know anything about health and wellness, but I just decided that I'd take my show business career and really mold it into something that was a little bit different. And I wound up passing the health boards for New York State, which is very difficult to pass. I became a consultant to Aetna, and I produced these 14 specials. Aetna was the sponsor of the 14 specials, but no doctor got paid. We didn't pay their expenses. We had 30 different doctors, superstars, who all came to Detroit on their own dime, from Sloan, from USC, from all the major universities, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, and they all were on these 14 television shows that we produced. Jane Seymour was the host, and Paul Azan was another host. So with Jane, I understood when they asked the questions, these doctors, how much they wanted to tell their story, but no one would listen. There was no money. Who wants to hear about a doctor? Who wants to go on network news and hear that Lieber, who worked with you to create the Novo drugs, worked on the trials. Lieber, Weill Cornell had 17,000 patients in his obesity program, but he worked on the trials with Novo and Lilly. And he worked, though, for 20 years saying, I could do a drug. There has to be a drug. There has to be a gene. There has to be something, a way to stop obesity, because people just, it's more than just a vanity disease. And that's what everybody says, it's a vanity disease. But think about Lou. He was up against the wall for 20 years. And now he's a superstar. Everybody wants to see him. Everyone wants to go see him. And I decided after I did these 14 specials, after I saw the dedication of these doctors, after I was so inspired by Marion's death, I decided I have to do something more than just promote another show or produce another group. And by the way, I'm still involved in the entertainment business, and you'll read about something gigantic. I'm on the NDA, can't tell you about it now, but you'll want another podcast.
I will.
That's how big it is.
Oh my
So
gosh.
anyway, I decided to do something that's become the biggest thing in my life to date, which is I established Mediflix. After I had failed in the beginning to do something else with another company in the health and wellness field, but I realized that it was the doctors that it's all about. And I have to do the same thing I did at William Morris or as a manager, sign these superstars. So you're doing a podcast, but all these doctors have podcasts to a certain degree, but they're not really exposed all over the world. They're not really global. They don't really have hundreds of millions of people that should know their genius, know about what Lou knows about and what Fatima Cody, Stanford, I don't know if you know her from Mass General, from Harvard. She's brilliant.
Yes.
So she's my chief diversity officer. She's in charge of obesity with Lou, and another fabulous doctor from Columbia called Teresa Wood-Reed. She's also brilliant. So how do I take these brilliant people who know all about obesity, and 42% of this country, to be exact today, CVS just told me that number, and going to 50%, how do we educate consumers about diabetes, about obesity? How do we really teach them? And everybody, I'm standing up against the world because I'm doing something new, but Microsoft, the chief global medical officer, David Rue, Microsoft realized we're on the right track, creating videos, because people don't read anymore. They don't want to read text. They don't want to read on a text message from a doctor, complicated. No, they want the doctor to talk to them.
That's right.
Conversation. They want to be down. And if you're Black, you want a Black doctor, truthfully. If you're Spanish, you want a Spanish doctor. Just like they said at the BDO conference. He was right on. Reggie was right on. His team was right on. That's why I love what he's doing. And I'm segmenting Mediflix. I'm going to help veterans, but veterans talking to veterans, and veteran doctors who handle veterans know how to talk to veterans better than some guy who's never talked to a veteran. So it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
You could be Spanish, you could be Asian, you could be Black. It doesn't matter who you are, but you want to communicate. It's kind of like Match.com. I want to match you with the right doctor. So that's my dream about creating this thing called Mediflix, which will help people all over the world, global. And that's why I loved you. I loved you because you're Novo, and Novo is now doing something that's never been done before, which is helping people all over the world, but their message has to get out there. We have to educate consumers. It's almost like the vaccine. So many people didn't want to take the vaccine. They were afraid of it. And I think it did protect people, it did stuff. But who were the people that died first? The underserved.
That's right.
The underserved died first. The people that were obese died first. So why can't I help these people? I just got $5 million from Saudi Arabia because Prince Salman was operated on by one of my doctors. And he introduced me to Prince Salman because he had an obesity issue. And you know what? He realizes that we've got to help people in the Middle East because they have an obesity issue. And I went to Turkey, and people in Turkey, they serve candy in every single lobby of every single hotel. So, we're poisoning the world.
Yeah.
And really promoting obesity with Kentucky Fried Chicken, truthfully, and McDonald's and Wendy's, and feeding the most underserved people the wrong foods. So how do we turn it around? What do we do? Who do we go to? Who do we turn to? I turn to a great company like Novo, get on a mission, like I'm on a mission, but my clock is ticking. I'm not a kid. So I know I can communicate right now. I know I can tell the stories. I know I can tell them about the Rolling Stones, but they don't count anymore. It's these great doctors who are really influencers, but don't know how much they can influence the world at large. They could really change health and wellness. I could take the $4 trillion US health and wellness down to 3 trillion. I know that sounds like a ridiculous statement. I educate the consumer. I take them into my arms and give them, what's missing? Compassion. They talked about that at the conference. Compassion. I call it tender loving care. I call it bedside manner. Those old doctors used to have bedside manner. They used to go to your house. You know what they give you right now? 20 minutes. You know who governs that 20 minutes? Some institution that says you're going to see 20 patients today, or else, we're going to let you go. Who's your backup? You know what I'm doing? I gave 30% of this business, the gross, to the doctors.
That's amazing. My father-in-law is actually working on this very issue, this notion of the lack of compassion in the healthcare system. His name's Dr. Fred Dennis. He used to be an ER doc for quite a while, and he's working with a patient, and they are focused on this very issue, that the lack of compassion, and it is not the fault of the physicians. They're under undue stress because, as you've said, their visit times have been shortened to what has been calculated as profitable by the system. And then what happens is they get burned out. They're not able to sit and have a real nice conversation like what you and I are having that allows us to get to know each other, allows me as the patient potentially to share with you what my challenges are, and then for you to understand them and think, all right, what are the alternate things that we also need to be dealing with for this patient, and making sure that the compassion is present in healthcare.
I want to meet him. I'd love him. He should be part of Mediflix. And
Absolutely.
I want to teach our doctors about compassion.
Excellent.
And
very good.
The other thing that you'll find that they really want to tell their story. They want to talk about their new research. They want to talk about things, but they talk to 300 people who are on the boards of these hospitals, the big givers. But there is something going on in the country. It's called concierge medicine. So who's the rich and famous? The wealthiest people in the world are doing, and they're paying these big doctors to leave, and you'll have 500 patients, but you'll pay $5,000 like I do. So I pay a lot of money for concierge medicine in Florida and New York. I get treated well, but you know what? I understand the problem that the rest of the world is having, not getting concierge medicine, not getting, and I'll prove any day of the week that the concierge medicine, people that go to the concierge doctors, they're going to live longer. But think about how many people in the Black community who are working 2 jobs don't have time for a colonoscopy, don't even know that they must get a colonoscopy. If I just corrected that one problem, giving everybody a health day off. I want to create a national holiday, the health day off. You could take it anytime during the year. But those are the kind of things Obama and Biden and some of these other guys should be doing, thinking out of the box.
That's an amazing idea, actually, because you're absolutely right. There's a challenge that people have of taking the time, making the time. And I know I got to go to the office and do the job. It actually feels stressful for me to put that clinical appointment, which is probably available in the middle of the day,
Exactly.
into my schedule. There's the commute to get there, the wait time to sit there, the actual appointment itself, and who knows what I'm going to hear that I haven't been attending to. And
Exactly.
then the aftermath of the follow through. One of our big challenges is medication adherence, going to actually get the blood test that they've asked you to do. I had a blood test sitting here on my desk for months just because I needed to take that additional step of going to the clinical provider who was going to do that and make it happen. And so
Exactly.
I like your innovation there of
And-
actually
and
allowing a health day.
If they use their brains, employers would force that health day, because on that health day, you get the blood test, you get the breast cancer test or the colonoscopy or other tests that you should have, heart tests, everything else, do a physical. The reason why it's so important to the company, and they're gonna pay the people, maybe even give them a bonus for taking the health day, because their insurance will go down. They create healthier employees, their insurance will go down.
Mhm.
Federal government, create healthier people, and you'll get people off of the $4 trillion economy down
Yeah.
to a three trillion. It's like me promoting a new rock group. It's me promoting a new show. This is like breaking a movie. It's like breaking and trying to make people like Novo and others, leaders like Lilly and other people who are in the world of health and wellness, but they don't understand, how do we do this together? How do we mobilize? My doctors are on a mission. That's why I have 200 great specialists. Why did they all join? I'm not paying them. Why did they all join Mediflix? Eventually they'll get paid when we get membership organizations. Why do I want Reggie so badly? Because I feel I can really help him get the adherence factors under control. Get people to take this health day. I can go with Reggie and Fatima and other people that I put my finger on that are really influencers in Washington, like you, and we go to Washington together. That's what I wrote you about. And we say, listen, everybody on Medicaid and Medicare, they get help. You need these drugs, you need help. And that we can prove within a very short period of time, we're going to get you healthier. We're going to change, we're going to prevent diabetes, because right now 87 million people are pre-diabetic. What do we do with all these people? Cut off their legs? My mother had her legs cut off. All right. And my sister had to push her around. You know why? Because she wouldn't listen to all of us. She was heavy and she wouldn't listen to us. Stop eating ice cream, stop eating the sweets. And sure enough, she wound up, my sister couldn't even handle it because she had to be lifted off the wheelchair.
One of the things that came to mind for me when we met at this BDO Health Equity Conference in New York, I was listening to all of the different disease states that were live on stage there that we were talking about. We talked about Black women's health and cancer screenings and clinical trial diversity and all this other stuff. And my company, Novo Nordisk, is very focused right now on obesity care. And as you were talking about your mother just now, it hit me that one of the big challenges we have is when someone reaches Medicare age, if they've been living, especially if it was someone who looks like me, a Black person or a person of color in America, they may have been living with health inequities and disparities their entire life. Now they reach Medicare age, and unfortunately, they're not going to have some of the care that is currently scientifically proven and available, things like what Dr. Cody Stanford is focused on. And so you're going to end up perpetuating those inequities in Medicare after we've paid our entire lives for this availability of care in our later years. And so just the notion that the inequity gets perpetuated even when the science has advanced past what the policy allows is another big problem. A guy that I would love to introduce you to is a gentleman named Daniel Dawes. Daniel promotes something called the political determinants of health. And it speaks to something that we've always known, but have never really had a label for. We talk a lot about social determinants of health, but the truth is there's a lot of policy changes that need to happen that will enable our better health too. And I think that policy angle is actually something that, Reggie Ware and many other people could be helpful in advocating for changes to. This is that DC advocacy that you were talking about.
Right, including you. And you know what, the thing, because you know how Washington works, but the truth is that if you help mom or your aunt and she becomes, or they become, because it could be dad too, the bottom line is if you help them, they will influence their kids. so you don't keep it going. The problem is we're on a circle, and I see it in my own family. You can imagine how it is in an African-American family, a poor people's family of any color, but it's so prevalent in the Black and brown communities. They just had a whole thing in the New York Times, how many amputations they're doing in the Spanish community. You can't believe how many amputations are happening in that community. And now you have an amputated person in America who's a citizen. You gotta take care of them. Suddenly they can't work, they can't do the things they used to do, and now they're on Medicaid. What are we doing? We just keep on prolonging the issue instead of cutting it off immediately.
That's
So
right. Yeah. Addressing the central causes is hugely impactful. There's a lot of discussion about the challenge of the expenditure in healthcare. And what is missing from that is discussion about prevention. And there's a lot of folks that talk about prevention, but one of the things that I've noticed is nobody wants to invest in prevention. The perverse incentives in our healthcare system don't allow us put a finger on the pause button and say, let's fix a few things. We just keep pressing forward, as you've alluded to, Steve, and therein lies a big part of our challenge. Going back to obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, kidney diseases, multiple different cancers, all related to obesity.
Absolutely.
And so if we were to start in what I think of as the center of the bullseye, if you hit that target, you end up hitting those concentric circles of comorbid conditions that are being impacted. But nobody wants to invest in prevention.
What can we do to do exactly what you said? Right now, it's a vanity drug. Right now, that everybody who gets this drug, gets it, the rich.
Right.
They say that they're taking it for diabetes, that, they find a way to get the drug.
And that's the challenge of this, I think, is that there's the misperception that it is vanity when in fact the science says there's a brain gut connection and it's a chronic disease. That's part of the misconception. And this is one of the wonderful things that Mediflix brings to the mix is the truth telling about the science that cuts through the social media hype of vanity over actual disease treatment.
Anyway, you see my passion about trying to change this. And
I do.
My clock is ticking, so I don't waste any time.
We shouldn't waste any time because this is important stuff. Listen, before I let you go, Steve, I want to ask you one more final thing.
Sure.
In your email to me and in person, you said something very poignant that I wanted to highlight. You said that Mediflix is your destiny. That's not a light phrase to say. You've already said your time is ticking. Why, what does it mean that Mediflix is your destiny?
Well, what it's all about in life. So I read the Torah. I didn't read it, but I studied a little bit of it when I was a kid, but I really studied it later on in life. I had a rabbi come and teach me about, remember, this world's 5,000 years old and we're repeating history. We're fighting this war between two brothers who just had a fight, and all of a sudden the same fight is going on right now. The bottom line is, he explained to me, you're here a speck of time. Think about it. If you live to be 100, you're so lucky. So the world's been 5,000 years and you're going to live 100? What did you do? I created a rock group. Who cares? The most important thing I created with my grandchildren, my kids. That comes number one. But number two is, what did I do to really change the world and make it a better place? Now, what you don't know about me is I'm all about somebody in the sky is watching me. So if you read my Sagittarius, every time you read my horoscope, and it's like God's watching me. I bump into people and they are in my life because I need them. So it's so incredible that God put me here, left me here when he took away my wife. So why did he leave me here? So when I'm on that beach in Italy, I figure out that my destiny is not another rock group, is not another show, even though I'm going to be producing some big shows, Andy Warhol's life story on Broadway, and lots of other things. But my destiny, my true destiny is, how did I help change the world? How did I help this world become a better place for my kids and my grandchildren and future? We have a movie, Oppenheimer, that's going to win the Academy Awards. He regretted creating the atomic bomb, but perhaps, he's lucky. You have to look at the good side. The options were the Germans could have had it and we'd be speaking German right now. So the truth is, and they probably would have killed the blacks and the gays and the Jews, all of them. But health there'll be a health issue that brings us together. There was almost one just now, and with this vaccine we created, but millions of people could have died in China. Millions of people could have died around the world, many more than actually died. There'll be other health crises. Health will change the world. Health and wellness, we have to be on top of climate change and health and wellness. People are blinded to this. So how can I help change that destiny? By putting the doctors first, by giving the doctors the respect they used to have. What Reggie talks about in the Black community is there are two people that Black people respect, their preacher and their doctor. And he's taught me that. And you know what? The truth is, everybody still respects their doctor. They don't think the doctors lie to them. They think the doctors tell the truth. In this world of everybody BSing and doing AI that's not hallucinations and everything else that we're getting that's fake, the one thing I found that my doctors are not fake, and I have to really bring them to the rest of the world. So my destiny is to do something that's so positive that we can change health and wellness globally, and we can make the world a better place. So this is true all over the world. Health and wellness is the key issue that we're going to face in the future.
I love it, Steve. Your passion for it is obvious and clear. It's funny too that unfortunately sometimes these passions are born out of loss. I'm sorry for Marion and how she left us and how she left you, but to hear that you took time to be introspective and sit and think, what happened to us and how can I make this better for other people is incredibly powerful and impactful. And I'm really glad that you're here doing this work for people who will never have anywhere near the resources that you or I have. This information democratization, I think, is incredibly important, and you guys are going to do some great stuff. Steve Lieber, this has been amazing, man. You've been so most generous with your time. I loved hearing your story of your life. And one of the things that I loved that you brought was you and I met at a health equity conference, but you talked about equity throughout your life, that you're sort of living in communities of color, your advocacy in the music industry for people of color, especially coming from your own background where you had been persecuted as a Jew in your community. You recognize that inequalities exist all over the place. And for you to bring equality to information sharing, I think is super, super important through Metaflix.
I'll give you this quick aside.
Sure.
There was a guy, Bobby Womack. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but Bobby, he played with the Rolling Stones and he was one of my clients. This tells it like it is. So Bobby was always, he did his share of drugs. He spent a lot of money and he wasn't really careful with his money, and he winds up getting a lot of trouble, and he's gonna go bankrupt. They're taking over his house and they're trying to take out his furniture. They're taking everything he bought on time payments and things. And he calls me, Steve, what am I gonna do? I said, Bobby, I don't know. This is a crazy situation. I said, I'm coming to Cal, and I lived with him in California for a month. I know this is insane. I left my family. I lived with the Womacks for a month. I wish he was here to tell you this story himself. And every time somebody came to try and harass him, to try and beat him up, me and my lawyers, I worked out settlements, deals, and no one took a stitch of furniture. He didn't have to sell his house. But it took a month to straighten him out. And he worked with the banks, I worked with everybody. And I wish Bobby was here to explain how we ate dinner together and we discussed it every night, and how he grew up as a person, as a human being, seeing what his family would have gone through had he lost everything. It really was one of my great experiences of really understanding how they abuse someone even like a Bobby Womack, and lots of athletes. You don't realize it because you're not in the business, but you can't believe the football players who don't have insurance today that were alumni. By the way, I went to the Alumni Association, football, NFL alumni, all members of the alumni. I want to give them Mediflix for free.
That's amazing. Love that.
Yeah. So I'm going to do it with the NBA too, because the old players are the ones that didn't have the great insurance policies. Their legs, their limbs, their backs, their mental, their concussions. Joints, their concussions, they're hurting. But it's only 10,000. Why not give it to them?
Amazing.
All veterans are free.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Steve, you're on a fantastic mission, man. I'm so inspired by it. Take care, Steve. Thanks for being here with me, buddy.
Great talking to you, and we'll be in touch. Be good.
Bye-bye.